Okay, so we are now ready to start this meeting, which is all about how you can advocate at your schools, how you can lead advocacy efforts in your own PTAs. And so here's what we're going to go over tonight. First of all, what is advocacy? It's really intimidating to a lot of people, members of PTAs, but also PTA leaders. And so just getting a little more comfortable about that and what it is and how we all already do it all the time because we're parents, and probably because of other reasons too. And then how advocacy fits within the PTA purposes, what issues you can advocate on in your PTA, and how we can advocate. So that is what we're going to cover. And if there is anything else that you all are hoping that we cover tonight, then please let me know. And because we've got a small group, I can try to answer questions while we're going through things. And so if you have a question while we're going, just go ahead and raise your hand or put something in the chat, unless I've specifically asked for questions, and then you can just let us, you can just unmute yourself and ask, but in general, just raise your hand and I'll try to catch you while we're going. Okay, so what is advocacy? All right, I have a few questions for you. You can raise your hand in the Zoom. You know how, do you all know how to raise your hand in Zoom? You can, you have the reactions button, so you can go ahead and use that. And let me know if you've ever done any of these things. Okay. Have you ever talked with your child's teacher and asked a question about how you can help your child, or have you ever asked for help with your child from your teacher? Raise your hand. Yeah, or thumbs up, whichever one works for you. Okay, as I figured. All right, have you ever spoken with a doctor about something your child needed? Like maybe they were sick, maybe you needed medication for them, maybe you needed some advice on how to support them through something, or maybe as a brand new parent, right? Have your very first child, what do I do with this thing that I now have? Okay, hands up, good. Have you ever attended a PTA or a school site council meeting and asked questions about the data that was shared, or maybe voted on a plan to support students at your school at one of those meetings? Okay. Have you ever contacted an elected official? Raise your hand. Okay. Have you ever called a company to ask for a refund or ask them to fix a problem you have in your home? Yep. Okay. Have you ever helped a neighbor or a grandparent figure out a bus schedule or how to get around somewhere? Okay. Have you ever volunteered for a campaign or suggested that someone vote in a certain way based on what values you think that they might support and that you support? Okay. All right. So you're all advocates. Those are all things that you do as an advocate. All right. So advocacy, this is a very simple definition. And that is any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports or defends, or pleads on behalf of others. All right, so how does this fit within PTA purposes? As I said, there are a lot of people that I've heard over the years that just get a little angsty about it. They don't know how to do it. They don't think they're good at it. They don't realize that they do it all the time, as those questions that I just asked you will indicate. Every parent at least is an advocate, but so is everybody in some way or another, because they've had to ask for things that they need, or shared just generally shared something that they need help with. So everybody does it to some degree, and it's just making that connection for them that's important and gets them more comfortable with that, and especially with that word. All right, so why do we advocate? When I first got involved with the district PTA as legislation chair, I've played that role twice, and the first one was back in 2009 to 11. And there were a number of parents who, across the district who I organized, and we went and set up meetings with a lot of local representatives to the state legislature. And I won't ever forget, one of the meetings we had during that round, we were sitting in Assemblyman Tom Amiano's. You remember at that point, he was the assembly person for District 17. We were sitting in his office, and he told us that it was our job as his constituents to tell him what he needs to know as he makes decisions in the legislature. And that you just generally gave us this advice that you never get what you don't ask for. Don't assume that the people who are making decisions have all the information they need to make the right decisions. And that really stuck with me. And this is, I don't know how many of you know Tom Amiano's history in San Francisco and what he did to support students, but he is a member who put the Public Education Enrichment Fund on the ballot to make sure. He also made sure that there was going to be funds for schools when we were having emergencies funding wise. So he helped establish the rainy day fund in the city that would help us within those moments. And he still needed advice from us on education issues at the state level. And that just surprised me because he seemed somebody who knew a lot. So it's really important for us. It's our responsibility actually as citizens and constituents of our elected leaders, but really of anybody who is a decision maker. We can't expect them to read our mind. And so one of our purposes in the PTA is to secure adequate laws for the care and protection of children and youth. We have these core values that include this idea that we have a responsibility advocating for that safety and welfare of children and a quality education for them. It's our job to educate decision makers and the public. That is sometimes why we put out information to help people feel more informed as they go about their lives. We're supposed to influence laws, policies, and programs. That's the purpose of the PTA. It's one of the purposes of PTA. And then one thing actually I'll note, because Carol's sitting here in this meeting, when I first was in that role back then, and I was getting to know Carol, one of the things that she would say all the time was that no amount of fundraising equals the impact of a single piece of good legislation. So in our PTAs, we're trying to raise money, but it's a lot of effort to do that, and it only brings a certain amount just for your school. But if we all can work together to advocate for laws and bigger things that will impact more schools, it's that equal effort is so much more impactful when we're working together to change laws. As you might know, and as I've tried to convey already, the advocacy is at the heart of what PTA does and what it's here for. The National PTA is the oldest and largest volunteer organization working exclusively on behalf of children and youth. And for more than 100 years, this organization has promoted the education, health, and safety of children, youth, and families. And it all began when there were a couple of women, Alice McClellan Burney and Phoebe Apperson Hurst, who were really concerned about our nation's children. The United States was feeling the enormous impact of the Industrial Revolution. There was an immense wave of immigration flowing into the country. There were children working in factories and in mines in the streets of cities, and some of them could not attend school or even have enough food to eat. And so they tried to figure out what they could do about it. And so they held their first meeting in 1897. And after a lot of grassroots work in different parts of the country, well, before that, before they had their first meeting, they were doing a bunch of grassroots work in different areas of the country. And so they met a couple years before that first meeting and planned the meeting to bring their ideas to others. And so they had more than 2,000 men and women show up and fill a hall in Washington, D.C., and formed the National Congress of Mothers, which is what the PTA was first called. So that's a pretty significant show of strength in 1897. And this movement continued to grow in California. In 1900, the Los Angeles Federation of Mothers clubs was formed. Before that, we had San Francisco. In San Francisco was organized the California Home and School Child Study Association. California joined the national organization as the California Congress of Mothers and Study Circles, a couple of years later. And so all of that became this California State PTA. So this has just been growing across the country. And there's a lot of history you can read about that. There was another woman who joined their efforts a couple of decades later, Selena Sloan Butler, who was working in Atlanta, Georgia, to also unify parents around the same kinds of issues. And so she founded not only her own school's PTA, but also the Georgia Parent Teacher Association, and then the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers. And so these two organizations combined together to join forces in 1970. So there's a long history of people working together on these sorts of issues. These are a few of the things that our country has because of the PTA advocacy: kindergarten, child labor laws, hot lunches in schools, a separate juvenile justice system, labels on music, TV ratings. There's so much. And the question is what are we going to do next with the people power that we have as people who really care about what happens with our children? And beyond just our schools, right? It's all the aspects of their lives. So this next question is, what issues can your PTA advocate on? So this is a quick refresher. Some of you may not know this, the PTA structure. So the PTA, as I was just mentioning, is this national organization. Every state in our country has also a PTA, just like the California State PTA, right? All of our countries, and also Puerto Rico. There's a couple outside of the actual states, but we have a lot of bodies underneath the national PTA. And then each state is broken up into geographical districts. California, I think we've got 28 maybe. I don't remember the latest number. Melissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know there in the last few years ago, there was a little bit of a change in the number, but I think it's 28. And so the California is divided into those areas, and then underneath districts are councils. We actually don't have any councils here in San Francisco. We're a relatively small geographic area compared to a lot of other district PTAs across the state, so we don't have a council. We go straight to units, and units is what you all are at. Your school is called a unit in sort of PTA terminology. And that is all important to know, because when we're looking at taking positions on issues, there's an appropriate PTA to take the position on a certain type of issue. So, oh, I wrote that wrong. I'll fix that later. The national PTA takes positions on federal issues. I put in local there today when I was updating the slides. So they take positions on federal issues. If there is something going before Congress, if there is an issue that is of importance to the entire country, they are the organization who will take a position on that issue. The state PTA is going to take positions on statewide issues. For instance, we had 2 ballot measures people voted on last week: Prop 28, or I'm sorry, Prop 28, the music and arts education measure, and then also 31 that was banning flavored tobacco products. And so the state PTA is the body that took the support positions on those. We did not do that at the district PTA. We were grandfathered into being able to support those issues, but they are the ones who actually made the endorsement. And if there are issues at the state legislature, the state PTA is the one who has the first opportunity to take position on those issues. The district PTA, which we are, the Second District PTA, we take positions on citywide issues. So again, we just had an election last week, and we took a position on Prop F and Prop G. That was the Library Preservation Fund and the Student Success Fund. We also have some issues that we are advocating for at the district PTA level around literacy and also attendance. Those are decisions that matter a lot to the district. You all can choose issues that also matter to your own units. And of course, all of those probably do matter to you at your own units. But there's a lot of strength in the power of a lot of members working together. And so when we take a position at the district PTA, every unit in San Francisco doesn't have to worry about all of the process that goes involved into taking a position. You just sort of inherit the position that we have taken and can choose to advocate along with us, or you can stay silent if it's not an issue your PTA wants to take action on. You can't go against it, but you can be silent on if you prefer. So unit, your own PTAs, you can take positions on issues at your own school. Maybe there's something neighborhood related. We've had PTAs who might have like a cell tower that's being put up really close to their school, or a cannabis dispensary, or there are things that some schools have wanted to get involved with. Maybe there's traffic issues near your school and getting certain curbs marked or stop signs put in, or things like that that are really specific to your own school and affect the students in your school and the families and teachers. So those are the issues that you should be taking your own positions on. All right, so in order to take a position as a PTA, you have to review PTA authorities. And this is how you have a justification for that position. And so here are a whole list of things you can review to help you with that. and you can go to the capta.org website. I'll send out these slides afterwards and you'll see the links for these. And so you can look at the policies that we have, our legislation platform. There are resolutions, which is really the highest authority that we have in the PTA. And a resolution is something that is put forward by a PTA who does a lot of research. They have to provide a lot of backup evidence why they want to bring this forward to the PTA. And so they have to prepare a whole packet for it. And then it comes forward at the state PTA convention, which happens once a year. And then that resolution is debated on the floor. So every member of California has the ability to vote on that. You know, if they are a delegate for their PTA, they get to vote on that resolution. So it is really a member-wide decision. And so it has a lot of strength. And so some of resolutions in the past have related to healthy food in schools, closing the achievement gap. There's a lot of them, and they're all listed on the California PTA website. And so if you find one of those that lines up with an issue you want to take a position on and it aligns with it, then that is something that helps you there. There are position statements. There's also the National PTA has similar resolutions and position statements. There might have been previous action by the PTA on the same issue. You can always cite that and the purposes of PTA, of course. And if you want to take a position on a state or city issue, what do? So it might be that there is an issue at the city or state level, but the Second District PTA or the state PTA doesn't take any position on it. Then you are allowed to take action at your own school on that. So I've seen instances where the state PTA decided not to take a position on a bill that's forward. And so you want to find out like why they didn't. It might have been that they didn't actually have sufficient authority to, or they might have just been, this is just not a big priority of ours. We don't have capacity to review it, but they may not take a position on it. And so then what you would do at your own unit was research both of the sides, look for the PTA authorities that would allow you to take a position on it. And you would have to bring it forward to your membership for a vote and record it in the minutes. And I'll go into a little bit of what that process is like in a minute, but that is how you would be able to take a position on a city or state issue if the state or district PTA has not. Okay, this is a big thing. We have to remind people about every year, and you saw this in emails from us and newsletters this fall. The PTA is a 501c3, and we can only take positions on issues, and we cannot take positions on candidates. So because we are a nonprofit, we have certain obligations. We are supposed to be nonpartisan, so we're not endorsing Democratic or Republican or any other political party for their candidates and for their particular platforms, anything like that. We're not aligned with a particular party. We're non-commercial, so we are not endorsing businesses. That is part of our obligation. So for instance, if you are going to partner with a business in your area, you don't say, go support them, they're the very best. You say, they have offered this discount for PTA members, you know, that you can use it if you would like to, you know. Non-sectarianism, we don't favor any religion over another. So elections that involve candidates are defined as partisan elections, even if it's for a nonpartisan office like school board. So your PTA cannot ever advocate for a candidate. Even if your whole PTA, even like lots of your members love a particular school board candidate or a supervisor candidate, your PTA cannot advocate on behalf of or for, you know, for that candidate. It's prohibited. The other thing to be aware of is that you cannot use your PTA title in candidate endorsements, and you should use your judgment in private endorsements. So for instance, if you as a PTA president had a candidate you really liked and you wanted to endorse them and they wanted to use your name, you could choose to do that. You just can't say, you couldn't say Michelle Parker, VP of Leadership for the Second District PTA, because that implies that the PTA is endorsing that candidate also. You could say Michelle Parker, Community Advocate, or if you have a different title that's not PTA, you can use that. The only caution is just that if you take a position on a candidate, just recognize that if it's a divisive issue and a divisive candidate, it might make some people in your PTA less interested in working with you. It's possible, but you have to use your judgment. You are allowed to. You just can't use your PTA title. And PTA members can definitely run for office, and they can list their PTA involvement in their biographical information. So if you run for office, you could say, about me, I've done this thing and this thing and this thing, and I was a PTA president for 4 years. You're totally allowed to put that in your biographical information. And the reason why this is important, all of this non-partisan stuff and not getting involved in candidate elections, is because it'll endanger your PTA status, nonprofit status with the IRS. It's kind of a big deal. So you want to be careful about that. Okay, but what you can do, here's the list instead of the can't do's. What you can do is promote and organize voter registration. So this is a good activity, especially at high schools. As you have students who are maybe getting their driver's license and getting, especially seniors, as they're getting closer to voting age, you can organize voter registration, or you could do it for parents who may not be registered to vote. You can also organize get out the vote activities. That's what GOTV stands for. So that means that you can just encourage people to vote. You'll see that in our newsletters all the time around elections. We will say, please vote, be an informed voter. Go find information that aligns with your values and just vote. We're not going to tell you how to vote except for PTA endorsed issues, but just we encourage people to be civically involved. And so we encourage people to vote. You can organize or participate in candidate forums or issue forums if you're going to debate a particular issue. If you did a candidate forum in the future, you just have to make sure all candidates are invited and it's factual, objective, and there's no campaign lit. This is probably not worth going into because we're not close to another election for a while, but this is here. You can take a look at in the future for reference if you when we get close to other elections. So again, issues, not candidates. All right, so here's how you can advocate. So as I was mentioning, you're going to be reviewing PTA authorities. And so what you do, the process to do this on any issue that you might want to take a position on as a PTA is form a study committee. So that could be 3 people in your PTA who are particularly interested in the issue, and they would get together. This does not have to be in in-person meetings. It can be on the phone. It can be asynchronous, in a Google Doc. There's a lot of ways these study committees can work. And their job is to research the issue and then look through that list of PTA authorities and see if there is enough authority to allow you to take a position supporting or opposing the area that you're talking about. And then you would make a recommendation as a study committee to your membership, and then the members vote on it. And if the members support the recommendation, then that then becomes your PTA's position on the issue, whatever it is. And there's a link that you'll see in the deck to find information about how to do a study on an issue. I'm going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions before I keep going. Is this all super clear? Okay. All right. No questions yet. Okay, so this is an example of a study committee report. So the study committee, out after they do all that research, they write it down and put it together, saying, here's what the issue is, here's our recommendation, here's the background, here's tells you, what will happen. This you're seeing is a study committee report, a little screenshot of it from a ballot measure. But again, it doesn't always have to be a ballot measure. It might just be an issue you're looking at. This is from a few years ago on a ballot measure about affordable housing. And so you'll see we had 3 members of our committee and we did all this analysis and then shared it for recommendation. And I actually, in the slide deck, you'll see there's a link to the actual report if you want to see what one actually looks like. And then here's what we did after we made that recommendation and the PTA members at one of our general meetings voted to support that measure. Here's what we did. We informed and advocated on this issue. Usually, if you're working within a school, if it's a political issue, you have to be a little careful. The one here on the left is what we would call a scrubbed version. The school district will not allow you to put political persuasive language out in like children's backpacks and all of that. And so you have to use a scrubbed, purely informational piece. And that's what this one on the left is. It just says, here is some information about these ballot measures, what it would do, and that's it. You can't say vote yes. You can just say, here's what it would do. But then when you're using PTA channels, not putting things in kids' backpacks or bringing them onto school sites, you can do things like this one on the right, which we put on social media, was vote yes on A, vote yes on E, vote no on C. So that is how you can handle PTA owned channels that are not publicly managed school sites. So again, that's political issues. If it is an issue, for instance, let's say literacy, that you're just taking, you have a position like we are working on literacy right now as district PTA, and love to have any PTAs join with us in that effort. We don't have to worry about that in the same way because it's not a political issue. It's a topical issue that you can share information in a newsletter at your school. There's not quite the same restrictions with political activity with public funds. Okay, talking about positions. This is a little bit more information about what I was just telling you. You can only use PTA owned resources to communicate issues on political issues like the ballot measures. And you can hand out persuasive materials on public sidewalks or public spaces, or again, like on digital spaces, like social media or newsletters you might send out through a PTA owned listserv or new email list or something like that. And so that there's more, the rest of that is what I already shared with you. Okay, we'll take a little break from that information. I have a quiz for you. Okay, I'm going to see what you know about some of the structures here in San Francisco that are helpful to know as you're advocating to decision makers about any issue. So you all can unmute if you have answers for these. So let's start. Is the superintendent an elected position? Do the voters elect him?
Are we just supposed to shout out?
Shout it out, because I can't see your faces.
The superintendent, no, is not elected by voters. I mean, of the state, yes, but not our local superintendent.
Actually, you caught the nuance there. Yes, you're exactly right. The state superintendent is an elected position, but our local superintendent is not. Does anybody know how they get their job? Our SFUSD superintendent?
The Board of Ed.
Yep. The Board of Ed is the one who hires them. In fact, he is their only employee. So he reports to them, and then everybody else in the district reports to him. So one of their main jobs is to hire and fire the superintendent. Okay. How many members are on the SFUSD Board of Education?
7.
Uh-huh.
7.
Yep, 7. Can you all name who they are? And the vote count has been changing, but I think we're solid where the last election left us now. Anybody can name all 7?
Pretty sure I can.
Okay.
It's Bogus
Mhm.
and Jenny Lamb and Matt Alexander and Mark Sanchez,
Mhm.
and then newly elected Lisa Weissman Ward and Lainey Matomedy, and it looks like it's going to be Alita Fisher.
Yep, you got it. It looks the vote counts were just switching in the last 2 or 3 days. So it looks like Alita Fisher is going to be the 3rd spot. Yep, thank you for that, Courtney. How many members are on the Board of Supervisors for the city? Anybody know? That might be harder to remember because not everybody thinks about the number of the district they live in. They just think about their neighborhood.
Yeah, I think about I know there's at least 7. There's probably 9, or I think there's 9 or 10.
There's 11. So our city is divided into 11 districts. You can, okay, actually, I'll do a little bit of a quiz. Does anybody know what district the Richmond is in? It's District 1.
District 1, yeah.
District 1, Connie is the supervisor. What district is the Castro in? Anybody know the number? It's tough. Is District 8? Do you know who the supervisor is in that district?
I'm looking at the answer, so that's not fair.
Don't look at the answer. It's Raphael Mandelman.
I was gonna say,
Um,
yeah.
How about what district is Chinatown in?
Is it 6?
Nope. It's 3.
3. Oh,
Does anybody know the supervisor for that one?
is it still Peskin?
It is.
Oh.
Yeah, it is Peskin. And then let's do one more. What district is the Excelsior in? That's 11. Does anybody know the supervisor? It's Asha
Is that
Safai.
Walton?
It's
Safai.
Asha Safai, yeah. Yeah, Walton is in District 10. So he covers the Bayview and Hunters Point and that whole like southeast part of the city. Well, not the whole southeast, because part of that's in 9, but it's a lot of the southeast is in 10, Walton's district. Okay. Now another tricky question. How many, other than the 11 supervisors, do you know how many elected officials preside over the city government in San Francisco? You could try to name them if you want, if that'll help you count. Who are our elected city officials? And we also, there's just a ballot measure that passed that's putting the election of citywide offices on the presidential years. Or not, I'm sorry, is that on the midterm? No, it's on the presidential years. We just passed a ballot measure to do that.
It's on even
Even
years.
years.
Yeah.
It'll now be on even years instead of those odd years. So what are our city elected offices?
The mayor,
Yep.
the DA.
Oh, assessor recorder.
Assessor recorder. I heard somebody say DA. That's right. What else?
Is there like a treasurer?
Uh-huh. It's 4.
What about controller? Do we have a controller in the city?
We do, but they're not elected. They're actually, that's an appointed role and it's a 10-year appointed role. But it's not
Oh,
elected.
wow.
We've got a city attorney. There's also this person was on our ballot just now because they had been appointed to fill their position and they were elected to hold it. Not the district attorney, which was one of them, but there was another position too that just ran to hold their seat, their appointed seat. Anybody know who that is? That's public defender,
Oh, yeah.
right? Manu Raju. And then there's one more. It's a law enforcement role, not the police chief though.
The sheriff?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So those are our elected city offices. So there's 7, and then we have the 11 supervisors. We also have 7 members of the community college board. And we have 7 members of the Board of Education, 3 BART board of directors. That's not the whole board of directors for BART, but we have 3. Here, there are 24 members of the Democratic Central Committee, Green Central Committee, Peace and Freedom Central Committee, Republican Central Committee. All of those party committees have 24 members in them. And we also elect Superior Court judges. So there's a lot of elected roles in our city. Do you know how many state representatives there are for San Francisco?
That's 2, right?
Nope. We have, what are the 2, do you all know the 2 state legislative bodies?
Probably a house and a, and a
It's a
senate.
version of that, right? But we don't call them the House. We call them the Assembly.
Assembly or something? Yeah,
Exactly. We have the Assembly and we have the
Senate. So we have,
Senate. Uh-huh.
so
So how
Scott
many-
Wiener is a state senator.
Right.
He represents us. And then we
Uh-huh.
have 2 assembly districts. We have 17 and 19.
Correct.
Cool.
Yep,
It's just
exactly.
those three? Okay.
It's just those are our 3 state representatives for San Francisco. We have other representatives who might live in San Francisco, but they're not representatives of San Francisco. Does anybody know who the state assembly people are for San Francisco? It was a pretty contested election last year for one of the seats.
Yeah. It was, didn't we just reelect Matt
Uh-huh.
Haney
Yep,
and Phil Kim?
Phil Ting.
Phil
Close.
Ting?
Yeah,
Phil
Phil Ting.
Ting,
Yep.
that's who it
So Phil Ting is like the west side of the city and part of the peninsula. And then Matt Haney covers kind of the eastern part of San Francisco. Okay. All right. Raise your hand if you've ever been in contact with any of these elected officials we just listed. Like, have you written them an email or had a meeting with them? Okay, a little bit. I mean, they change over, so you may have met with electeds or emailed them before, but maybe this round of people you might not have. They're not so scary, I promise. They're regular people. And if there's issues you care about, I encourage you to contact their offices. I remember feeling very intimidated by the idea of talking to elected officials when I was first in these advocacy roles, and they seemed really important and sort of out of my league. And I felt like I just didn't know a lot, and I wondered why they would have any desire to listen to what I have to say. And I just started cold calling offices when I was in this role. Carol probably remembers because I was picking her brain on things I should do way back then, and just started cold calling offices and asking for meetings. And then very, very quickly, parents were on their radar in a different way. And I was just bringing a lot of parents with me who were interested also. This is right after massive state budget cuts as we were coming out of the recession. And so people were really concerned about school funding at the state level. And so that was the thing we were really advocating around with state folks. And then locally, we were just trying to develop relationships. But it took some research to get there. Luckily, it's not quite as hard, and people seem to be a little bit more involved generally to figure these things out. Okay, so I do want to just ask if you all know who the decision makers are that are a little closer to home for you. So at your own schools, do you know who your principal is? Just raise your hand if you know the name of your principal or how to be in touch with them. And do you know, do you have a way to be in touch with your child's teacher if you have a kid in school? Okay, and do you know how to be in touch with our superintendent of SFUSD? Do you know how to find their information? And do you know how to find the information for your supervisor? So the area of San Francisco you live in, do you know how to find out, first of all, do you know how to find out who your supervisor is? And do you know where to find their information and their staff's information? If you don't know where to find that, unmute and let me know, because I'll tell you where to find it. Okay, good. Everybody knows. If you go to sfbos.org, you'll find the whole list there, and there are ways you can plug your name in. You can also, I really encourage you to have a relationship with staff. Having relationship with staff and legislative offices is so helpful because elected folks themselves can get really busy, and if you can develop staff relationships, that'll help you. Okay, then this is our last section of the night, and this is how to organize and advocate. So the first thing that you want to do is pick an issue that matters to you or your PTA. So do any of you have issues that your PTAs are talking a lot about right now that you want to bring up? We can use as an actual case study. You can unmute if you do. Or are you just generally curious? And that's why you're here, as opposed to trying to figure out how to navigate a certain issue. Okay, no takers.
Can I
Okay,
say something? Sorry,
yeah, please.
Michelle. How I guess our issue would be like school safety.
Okay.
Like, sorry to mention sort of the school shootings, those types of
Yeah.
things. So we are very like concerned about that at our school.
Okay. And when you're talking about school safety, is it specifically around, for instance, Columbine locks, or is it around how do we alert parents, or is it the safety like street side dropping kids off? Or can you tell me a little bit more about what the safety issue is? That people are concerned about?
Making our school, the facility, like safe enough that the kids, my daughter's here, when the Uvalde happened, they said that my daughter was like, the only thing that they could do was make paper balls and throw it out at the intruder.
Mhm.
So I felt like our safety plan wasn't that great. And so, yeah, that's just something at the top of my mind.
Mhm. That makes sense. That's really important, and it's unfortunate that that's on a lot of parents' minds. So this is something where there's a lot of information with the PTA and positions the PTA has taken on some school safety measures. It's not hard to find things to back up a position you want to have, but honestly, school safety is not controversial. It's okay to just organize your PTA
Yeah.
around something like school safety. And
Yeah.
so if this so here's some suggestions. If we were to take the school safety issue as a sort of a case study, you'd find out, be specific, right, about what it is you're trying to learn more about and understand. So if it's what do we do if there was an active shooter situation, or what would we do if there was for some reason, a lockdown for some other reason, what would you do? So first thing you want to do is learn. So maybe there's reading you can do up on the issue, like what are good safety measures, so that you become informed on the issue, so that when you go to ask questions or you talk to the decision makers, that you have some information that can help guide a conversation for you. So learn up on the issue, ask questions. You can ask people who know a lot about the issue. You can also ask questions of the people in charge. So in your case, talking to your administrator is a good place to start. What do they know? What are the plans in place? What is the opportunity for us to change some of those things? How does it work? Can we get into detail about what the process is? And if they say, this is over my head, this is something that is a district level thing, then you need to know that. So ask a lot of questions. You can attend meetings. If it is above their head, and they may say, actually, I need you to be an advocate with me. That can be also a really great opportunity. And so it could be that you're reaching out to the SFUSD facilities office or our chief facilities officer. There are people at the district level who your principal might say, can you help organize parents around this issue? And here's where we need to go, because they likely know. And if they don't, you can always reach out to us and we can help you figure that out at the Second District PTA. But it could involve it could involve reaching out to more people at the district level. It just depends on what your principal would say what they have control of and what they don't. And so you just want to get as much information as you possibly can. And then the other part of this is, who is the decision maker? And that is, like I said, you might have to ask questions to find that out, because it might not be obvious who the decision maker is. And it could be that the principal just hasn't gotten around to getting a real strong plan in place together. And so if that's the case, then people can work together to come up with the plan, and you can advocate for that activity to be happening. Is there anybody else who has some other suggestions on this topic? Like, what else would you do to prepare yourself to be an effective advocate on an issue like safety in your school? You can just unmute if you have an idea.
Like you already mentioned, about the position statements when people are doing study committees, and of course, this is not really a controversial thing to support. Of course, school safety is supported, but I always like to not reinvent the wheel. So I check California PTA's website on their position statements and see what the types of things that they're already suggesting to do or to advocate for. I'll put one in the chat. It's called Safe School Environments.
Thank you, Melissa.
California PTA position statement. So
thank you. Okay. So you're preparing yourself to be a good advocate, right? By doing all of these things. And then something that's really, really important when you are an advocate is to have a solid story. What is your story? So you've decided what your issue is, and you've learned what you can do about it. You know who has the power to make the change. So now, what's the story? Why does this issue matter? How does it affect you and your students at your school? What data and information can you share? Maybe it's information about the risk of not having a safe environment for school. I'm sure there's a lot of stats around that. And so you tell that story about why it matters, right? Why is it a significant story? Are there personal stories that you can tell within that? Personal stories, oh my gosh, they always resonate with decision makers in a way. Data always helps also, but that kind of personal story also can help if there is one. If there's not, then at least be able to tell the story about how it affects students and be prepared to share some information about why it's important data wise. And then really important also is a very specific ask. Not just help us on this very big, vague issue. Any decision maker is busy. So have a very specific ask. We want you to talk to the school district to make sure that we have Columbine locks at our school. Or we would like you to have a plan in the next month about how all of the entrances at our school are secure. Or we would like to know by the next PTA meeting what the process is for students to follow if there is a situation in the school that is dangerous that causes a lockdown, or whatever the specific thing is. You want to have that ready so that then when you meet with them, you can tell the story, why it matters, and you can ask your specific thing. So once you have all of that together, get that meeting or send the email, launch some sort of campaign. Like maybe it's, if you're advocating to Phil Ting, if you're on the west side of San Francisco and Phil Ting is your assembly person and you want him to vote, a certain, you won't have to make the decision on a state bill. We would have that, but you could advocate on that bill if it's something that really matters to your PTA. You can use the authorities we already have as a state PTA on that particular issue, but you could still tell your specific story about, we need you to vote yes on this bill that's going to get money so that our school can do this thing that really matters to our students, whatever it is. And maybe that's a whole bunch of parents sending an email or calling his office, right? Or if it's your supervisor, if you're at Sunset, then you're going to be calling Gordon Marr for a couple of months. And then after that, you'll be calling Joel Engardio because he just won that seat. But you would be calling his office and saying, we really need your help on this particular issue. We have an issue with safety at the intersection right near our school. We need your help here. We need you to help us work with SFMTA to get a new stop sign put in here. We're really worried. Here are some stats about pedestrian accidents with cars and our pedestrian fatalities in San Francisco, whatever it is, you're advocating for a stop sign. And so you're going to be contacting their office and you have a whole bunch of parents emailing that office, or you're setting up a meeting to bring a group of 6 parents with you, right? So get that meeting after you have your information, your background and preparation, your story, and your specific ask. So then you go and you have the meeting. You make the ask, or you send the whole blast of emails through a campaign. You make the ask, you let the decision maker know what it is you want. And then really importantly, again, I said decision makers get busy and that's why you want to check in with their staff, but also because they're busy, you have to do follow-up. So your advocacy doesn't stop as soon as you get that meeting. You have to continue to follow up. So at that meeting, big tip is before you end it, okay, thank you for making time for us. What's the best way to follow up with you on this issue? Should we follow up within a week? Should we follow up with your staff? When will you be able to communicate what your position on this or how you'll be able to help us? Like, have a next step before you leave that meeting. Don't just leave, right? That's really, really important. And then continue to follow up until you get the information or the decision that you need. And if you get a no, continue to keep that relationship warm and open. Warm meaning you stay active in it, not that you're just to stay active in the relationship. And if the decision actually hasn't been made, it's just like a position they currently have, you can continue advocating until something's done. Then the last thing is appreciation. Whoever participated in that action with you from your PTA, say thank you for your time. Thank you for your advocacy. A lot of voices really matter in getting things done. Thank you for making the time to show up for our kids, for our community, whatever that is. Even if your advocacy isn't successful, They need to know that showing up matters, and you can help make that clear to them. And then if that decision maker supports whatever it is or grants you whatever it is you've asked for, make sure you say thank you to them. It's often great. They love to be publicly thanked. Thank you so much to Gordon Marr for his help in getting a stop sign at our corner, and helping us to navigate the city agencies to make this happen. Our students are going to be safer as they cross the street after school. We're so thankful. So you tweet that out, as your PTA or whatever, and you say the private thank yous to their office and anybody who helped. You want to reward positive behavior or behavior that is in line with what you're advocating for. So don't forget that step. So here's just a list of activities that you can also do to advocate. You can do emails and all kinds of digital campaigns or phone calls or mailings, whatever it is, to share about the issue. You can, I'll give you one example we did many, many years ago. My kids' elementary school, again, when we were looking at a lot of budget cuts at the state level, we made these postcards. Every single kid in the whole school made 4 postcards, because at that time we had 4 legislators in San Francisco. There were 2 senators and 2 assembly people, and we had them write on their postcards like why they loved their school. And they either drew pictures, they wrote little letters like they loved their garden or they loved their art teacher or whatever. And they, that was the campaign, was I love my school because please don't cut funding to schools because this matters to me. And so that was our campaign, was all the kids made these little postcards, and it was so great. And then I mailed these fat envelopes to each of the offices with those. So you can be developing relationships. I cannot underscore the importance of developing relationships before crises. So if you are in, so let's say you're at Denman, right? So your supervisor is Asha Safai. Before you're in a crisis, you want to invite Asha to come out for an event that you're hosting at Denman. Like, please come, and you can say a few words. You're the supervisor for the area. You invite his staff to come to things that are happening, or you just have regular check-ins. Once a quarter, you check in with the staff or have a half an hour meeting, even if it's a Zoom meeting with a bunch of parents. Get on, just say, what are your priorities right now? Supervisor Safai, here's some things we're noticing in the neighborhood that would help the students in our school. We just want to have an open dialogue, build that relationship with your local elected official, invite school board members to know about, like, share with them the great things that are happening at your school, or share with them things that are maybe a struggle, so that they are more aware, or staff people at SFUSD as you're noting things that are working or are not working. Just keep a relationship and a dialogue open. You can regularly meet with them. So I think we've talked about most of the other things at some point during this meeting. I think maybe the only 2 that we haven't really talked about is holding informational meetings to educate others. So if there's a topic that you're hearing a lot of people care about at your school, one thing you can do is to have a program at your PTA meeting. So invite a speaker to come to inform more people about that issue. So if it's to go back to safety, if it's about safety, maybe there's somebody who understands best practices in school safety, and you want to invite them to come and speak to your PTA about those best practices. If it's around literacy, maybe you're going to bring a literacy expert to come and talk about best practices in supporting students to learn to read. And what the research talks about is good policy and good practice. You can invite somebody. And so use your PTA meetings to do a program, and that will also draw people to participate in your meetings because they care about that issue. So that's one thing you can do. And then the other one we haven't talked about that we'll talk about a little more here is creating an advocacy chair position for your PTA. So what does an advocacy chair do? I just want to say they do not have to do all of these things. They can really start small. An advocacy chair does not need to be an expert on advocacy. Like, we can help them get the kinds of information they need, and they can learn as they go. It's certainly what I did when I was first the legislation chair for the district PTA. I was totally learning as I went. I was not an expert. So you're not required to be an expert. You don't have to do a million things. You can just start small. I had no clue what I was doing. Somebody said, hey, you seem to like advocacy, because they knew I'd done like a few things at our school when I was the PTA president there. And they're like, you should be the the legislation chair for the district PTA is like, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay, maybe let me learn a little bit more about it. And so I just kind of dove in and figured it out as I went. And we were able to organize parents and teachers all over the city around a lot of issues. And it was a big community building activity. But it also really, we were able to get advocacy chairs in like 35 or 40 schools ended up, and we would meet regularly, and I would bring in speakers to help them learn how to do more effective advocacy. We had like staff members from legislators' offices come in, and it was really cool. So there was a lot that we did there, but my only example in that is that people don't have to do all of that, but you can start from nothing and build however is appropriate for your school. So they can help your PTA identify issues you want to coalesce around. And as I said in the introduction to doing this session tonight, this is something that can help unify your PTA. If you choose an issue that a lot of people care about and you choose to organize around it in some way, it can be a very unifying activity. It can give your PTA some purpose. So whatever that might be, even if that is just, we want more community events at our school, like let's work with our staff and our principal and the parents, and let's find a way to have more activities that will community build, or maybe they're about taking care of your school and doing cleanups and gardening days and whatever it is. There's a lot of different layers of advocacy that you can do and different types of things you might advocate for. Advocacy chairs can ask lots of questions. They can give updates. So maybe you have an advocacy chair update at your PTA meetings where they just give a little update on things that they've been working on, or opportunities for people to get involved in advocacy efforts that maybe we're organizing at the district PTA level. Maybe it's letting people know when the school board meetings are, so that if they'd like to show up and give public comment about things that they personally care about, they know when that is. Maybe it's letting everybody at the school, maybe in their updates, they'll let everybody know about all the different advisory committees and oversight committees the school district has, so that if anybody wants to attend one of those meetings to learn more about that particular committee's work, they know how to participate in that. An advocacy chair would also come to the trainings that we lead at the district PTA. The California PTA also holds an annual legislation conference, which is really cool. I've gone many, many times. They do it in Sacramento for like a day and a half or two every year. And there's a lot of trainings and understanding, kind of education policy specific to California. And then you actually get to go to the Capitol and meet with members and learn about priorities in the legislature during that session. And it's really fun. And the energy is really good because everybody there is like into advocacy. So it's really fun if you like to geek out on that kind of stuff. So they would help organize members. They might form an advocacy committee. So they're not the only one doing all the work. So maybe you've got a handful, you've got 4 people who are super into this. They could be an advocacy committee. And they could also be responsible for developing those relationships that I was talking about, inviting your supervisor and their staff to come to events your school holds, things like that. But there's a lot of room for creativity. There's no like real set agenda other than organize advocacy efforts for your school. Okay, that is really the bulk of the content I want to share, and I'll just open it up for any questions you all might have. The only other slides you'll see here that you'll see in the deck when I send it out are just some resources for finding things later. And then of course, this is one of my favorite quotes, that we all have a lot of power to change the world around us, even just a small group of people. So I want to just leave that with you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if anybody has questions before we close out. You're muted, May. Oh.
But thank you so much, Michelle, and this entire group for the meeting today. It was very informative, and actually it was really nice to hear your personal experience in terms of gathering parents together back in the days for you, and how you were able to just advocate for the students. And I feel like we were beneficiaries of it, that you've done that, a decade more before. And so just very much appreciate you for doing that.
Thank you, May. I'm glad you were able to come. I think she's freezing.
D2.
What was that? Sorry, you froze for a second.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, is there anything at the D2 level that parents could work on together, or anything currently right now? I don't mind.
Yeah,
being
there's a couple things that that we are coalescing around at the district level when we were setting some priorities for the year. And one of them is around literacy and how the district is teaching using the science of reading is something that we're advocating for. And then also another issue that we're advocating around, and just in the very, very beginning stages, is chronic absenteeism. So those are two areas that we're advocating around. And then other priorities we have are to try to get advocacy chairs in schools and making sure there's a point person in every school, so that if there is something we want to organize around, there's somebody who is a point of contact for us. So those are some areas we have put. I've shared some things in the newsletter around, like the literacy letter that we wrote to the board. So you've seen that, but we haven't actually had a specific ask for you all. But I think that is a really helpful question that you're asking, because maybe we should be putting some asks out to the PTAs, like consider sending an email that says this, and not just showing you what we've done, but also asking people. So thanks for that question. Are there any other questions or comments before we close out?
I have a comment. I think you did a great job.
Thanks, Carol. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Well, let's close it out for the night. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful evening and a good fall break with a week off of school with your families, and get to do some things that you're grateful for. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.